Oh, hey, welcome back to another episode of DM Masterclass. Today, we are going to talk about Overland Exploration adventure games. First of all, what is an Overland Exploration game? Well, to answer that, we have to look into the type of games that it falls into. Classically called an adventure game, an overland journey game, or an open world exploration game, these type of games fall into the category of adventure games that I dub the trifecta of adventure games that consist of dungeon crawlers, boss battlers, and of course, the overland exploration. What does an overland exploration do exactly that sets it apart from a dungeon crawler or boss battler? Well, the name kind of already says it. A boss battler is the end battle that you have with a boss, where it's just about the boss. In an earlier part of the journey, you could have a dungeon exploration, which is the dungeon crawl. And at the very beginning of a typical adventure, you would have an overland journey, where you go across the wide and vast lands and you try to get from A to B, maybe to C to D, until eventually you get to your goal of where you want to be, and maybe then dive into a dungeon and defeat a boss. Not necessarily though. An overland adventure can also just be an adventure that stands all by and on itself as a exploration exercise, if you will, in authorship and complete autonomy of your character's actions and what you want to do with that character. Now, autonomy is key in this discussion because whereas a boss battler defines itself through mastery of defeating the boss and getting to know its weak points, and exploration is part of the dungeon crawl's forte, if you will, where you are exploring the actual dungeon and the location is everything around that. And so it's the connectedness to the world that you have and the location itself and the enemies within that plays up. In overland journey or overland exploration games, it is all about the choices you make that determine where you go next. Yes, it is about the location, but it is also about the people you meet, the characters that you meet, or the events that occur, or the side quests that you can go on. Everything is determined by the choice of the player in which direction they want to go and what action they want to take when they arrive. Just like any other game, an adventure game is made up of mechanics and theme, and adventure games such as the Overland Exploration are no different. For instance, the Hexplore It series, the 5 volumes that have appeared thus far, consist of a very mechanical, mathematical exercise of what exploration overland truly means. You move from one hex to another hex, you maybe flip over tiles that reveal more hexes that you can go into, and all these hexes are distinct little spaces that have an impact upon your travel and upon the rations that you eat and the items that you try to craft with materials from around you. Or maybe a hex can be like a very special location where you can go to get like blessings for your journey, or you can have a specific weapon crafted, or you just gain more information about specific parties that you're willing to meet, or a boss that you eventually have to defeat. Or maybe even the location of a dungeon somewhere down the road that will hide even more enemies and provide even more loot. You can also have a very narrative experience, such as in Sleeping Gods. In Sleeping Gods, you have a storybook with entries, and each time when you sail your ship into a specific area, you encounter that paragraph of narrative with a character that you encounter, or choices that you have to make, or enemies that you have to confront. Generally speaking, there is a campaign to all of these games, and you're trying to meet the goals of that campaign, but each session and each choice within that session, of which there can be very many, have their own distinctive little flavor, their own distinctive little event their little encounter or a little treasure, a little benefit or a little detriment that happens to your character. And so your choices are everything. And as such, the Overland Exploration games also depend very much on your character and how you have a theater of the mind experience through your character, envisioning the lands that you're traversing and the survival trials that you have to endure on your path while you go from A to B or from B to C, etc. Overland exploration or open world exploration, if you will, is a very popular genre nowadays, as it allows designers to leave the choices to the players themselves, but populate an entire world where they get to practice their world building with events and people and locations that may connect to one another. They may not. They may be standing upon their own merits. You get to piecemeal your world together. You get to practically build your world on the spot and make everything interactive towards the players and see the little connections occur as you're designing, but also later on as a player, for instance, you see materialize before you as you make the choices from going from one location to another. Overland exploration games also lend themselves very well to overlapping the role-playing game genre, but it is more aimed towards surviving in nature, and as such you may sometimes have to hunt and you may sometimes have to gather and craft items. You are susceptible to the whims of the weather gods and the terrain that you're traversing. You encounter NPCs that have nothing to do with your quest, and as such an open world, an open exploration game can be very entertaining for a role-playing game aficionado. And as you see with these adventure games, whether it be an open exploration, a dungeon crawler, or a boss battler, they all tap into a specific part of the role-playing game experience. That's why I call them adventure games, as opposed to more mechanical games. These adventure games are all thematic games. They all rely heavily on the theme, the world building, the three elements that make up good stories: characters, events, locations. They focus on the journey from one place to another, the journey that we encounter as we confront a villain or a boss, the journey through a dungeon. It is all about the journey. It is all about getting from point A to point B and the experience in between. Next time, we are going to look at the more mechanical games, the Euro games, if you will, that focus more on states, the winning state, the beginning state, and how you get from one to another. In the meantime, keep exploring. What is an Overland Exploration adventure game? First of all, in the adventure game theme of First of all, what is an Overland adventure game? Follow us this season with classes 201 through 20, who knows? All about, something. God, what is it all about?